Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon to this lively discussion sponsored by the good people of testresults.io. I don't know why, for some strange reason, they decide to trust us. So here goes. Today we have a nice little discussion where you, the audience, will be allowed and be able to ask questions and get them answered right as we speak. Just as we debate about things, you could ask questions and you get them responsive. The topic today is test automation and the use of generative AI.
And that is when Larry stopped.
Yeah, so you know where we get to in the next 2 hours coming. So what we're gonna do first is So what we're gonna do first is get everybody in and we're gonna I'll let everybody introduce themselves, and then we will start off a little general discussion before we start taking questions. So let me see, according to my screen, I will go left to right on my screen. So first up, Tobias.
Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. I'm Tobias. I'm the managing director of testresults.io. And what we do is actually, we do have a tool that supports you during your testing, that you can automate your checks. And it gives you some insights on that actually. And we use some kind of artificial intelligence actually to have a better user journey experience over there. That's it already.
All right, thank you for that, Tobias. And next we go to Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Bolton. I have been a tester for almost 62 years because people are born testers. I teach a class and a methodology, rapid software testing, where we acknowledge and honor the use of tools. We use tools every day, all the time. We think that where the action is in the skill set and the mindset of the tester. So we're focused on doing the fastest, least expensive testing we can do that still gets excellent results and completely fulfills the mission, which is finding problems that matter before it's too late. That'll do.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for that, Michael. Next, we have Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Grossman. I'm known as the Dark Arts Wizard out on Twitter and Threads and every other social media that's out there. Been doing this for about 22 years. I've played around with just about every automation tool and platform that's out there, including testresults.io. And I also host my own little sandbox called Candy Mapper. You can go out there and play with it and try and get your tool to mess around with it and see if it... I have two versions. One's broken, one's fixed. And you can see if you can find issues in it. I also like to speak at conferences and show off. I'm usually the guy who comes in with a little bit of PowerPoint and a lot of big live demos. And that's kind of what makes me different out of the whole thing. And, I'm happy to have been invited to this and bring on the questions. I'm more than happy to see what I can get out there for you.
Okay, and now to me, the host. Yeah, I'm Larry Goddard, and I'm the creator of Classy.js. It's a test automation framework using WebDriver IO under the hood. Outside of that, I do a lot of this, what we're doing now, a lot of test talks, and I mentor people for some strange reason, but yes, I do. I mentor people in leadership and career advice plus tech. And for today, so that's it about me in a nutshell. And today, what we want to do is, I want to start off by just grabbing a little insight from each of our panelists on what is their view on the term generative AI. You know, when they hear it, what does it mean to them? As a not getting into what it could do, what it can do, just from your perspective, what does generative AI mean to you? Anybody?
Yeah, let's start. I mean, generative AI to me actually is a marketing term. And that is, I can also tell you why, because in the end, artificial intelligence is a subpart of computer science if you study at the university. So there is nothing that is called generative AI. It's like machine learning, deep learning, all of that stuff is part of artificial intelligence. So generative artificial intelligence is just a made-up term for marketing reasons. That's it. That is my 2 cents.
Michael, anything to add about?
I'll go further. I'll say artificial intelligence is also, to a significant degree, a marketing term. In that, if we don't know what intelligence is, and we're not very clear on that, the notion of artificial intelligence is not really very well founded. There's a lot of discussion about it, a lot of talk about it. We're trying to figure it out. But generative AI, when somebody mentions that, of course, one of the things I think about is ChatGPT. Now, my colleague James Bach and I have been doing some disciplined testing of ChatGPT over the last couple of weeks, which we'll get into more later, I imagine. But what it is effectively is a generator of bullshit. Now, bullshit is defined by Harry Frankfurt. I'm not going to get this exactly right, but saying stuff with a reckless disregard for the truth. And ChatGPT does that because it doesn't have a concept of truth.
And I think we have lost Michael there for a bit.
This is I love streamcasting for this reason.
I can hear him on my side. We're good.
Yeah, great. So Paul, anything you want to add before we jump around?
Michael and I are going to have different views on generative AI. But I think we can actually, I'll look at it at a different point. A lot of people also know that I've got a background in art from an art school, so I look at artistic stuff. And I do see that there's a big divide in the generative AI approach where you're using AI like Wonder to go and create some, give it some string and it'll sit there and create some sort of wild fantasy pictures with a lot of characters that have that that not quite human look to all of them. And most people, well, I don't know if it's most, I think it's like half and half. It hate what gets generated from that. And in fact, we might even talk a little bit about what's going on with Hollywood these days. The generative AI of imaging and deepfakes and having AI create scripts for TV shows and stuff, which I will agree with Michael there at that point. If it's trying to create a script, I'm pretty sure it's probably going to generate some BS on that. But the way I'm looking at it is it's a way to get me halfway to, or even more, 90% of the way to what I need, without sitting there for hours trying to figure out what's the right way or the correct way to do something. I kind of see it as having a mentor on my side that knows quite a bit more about what I'm doing or want to do. So that's my opinion. The generative.
Does it?
It does. I don't have to sit there and try to come up with a good description of a header for my function that I wrote. I can just sit there and say, paste it at ChatGPT and say, please write the header for this, and it does a fairly good job of it. Which
fairly good is my problem.
I'll like I said, I'll go 90%. If you can get me 90% of the race, and then I can just run the last 10%, that's fine. I'm cool with that. Get my stuff done faster. I like speed.
No, I like that. To add to that, and I mean, I can agree with everything that everybody is saying, but except to one small point. I think for me, besides the whole marketing thing, because that's all it is at the end of the day. You know, AI powered and AI generated is all about marketing and who get the best pitch, make the most money, I guess. But when I hear the term generative AI, what the first thing comes to my mind is, what is it generating and how is it generating it? That's the first thing that's popped into my head. And I played around with ChatGPT like everybody else, and some of the things, you know, I ask it some questions and then rephrase the same question and ask it again, you know, and then ask it a different question, but have some of the keywords from the first question. And one of the things that I realize is that all the responses you will get, about 80% of it will be the same thing. And that is one of the things where it kind of, I wouldn't use the word frightened, but I think that is one of the things that we need to look at when we talk about generative. So from my point of view, I kind of agree with everybody, just in the sense that that word generative bit, is what it is and how it is. And as we go along, we'll talk about it, like I was explaining to the guys just now before we started, about me doing a search in ChatGPT, and a very lovely response came back. So that is just one of the things. So I mean, now let's get into the whole idea of what it is and what this evening is about, and what people intend here. One of the things we want to talk about is generative AI, or let's say the AI implications or the use of ChatGPT and the ethical implications of it. And by that, and that raises immediately, like we said just now, that raises one little question about the whole deepfake thing. If you could ask this, like I use ChatGPT for the reference. If you could ask ChatGPT, who is Paul Grossman, and spit out some stuff at me, and I take that to heart and go and publish it somewhere, I might be screen all over big time. So that is my question here to you guys. In terms of the ethical implications, well, what's your take on that? And throw that to Michael first.
Well, the ethical issue there are lots of ethical issues, in fact, with generative AI. One of them is that the producers of text and the producers of art, in the case of the image generators, have a beef, and that is that their work is being appropriated without them being rewarded for it. Somebody, I forget, my wife pointed me to this. My wife is a graphic artist, and I forget the specifics of it, but it was essentially automated plagiarism. So that's an ethical problem right there. A machine is going up and scooping a bunch of stuff off the net, and it's not rewarding the producers of it. So this is plagiarism at enormous scales. That's one thing. But another ethical issue that we got to deal with is that whenever we abdicate our responsibility to machines, the question is, who gets sued? When there's a problem with any kind of, for example, in the case of an autonomous vehicle, supposedly autonomous vehicle, who gets sued when the autonomous vehicle is responsible for a problem? Who has responsibility for what an automated vehicle does? Who has responsibility for what goes out over the web when lies and falsehoods are being generated at enormous scales?
Exactly.
So AI, James Bach once again referred to AI as automated irresponsibility.
Yeah,
and that's not far off.
No, that is speaking volumes as itself. But and somebody just Larissa to the exact just posted something up here that and to your point, she said the person who uses the AI, quote the robot, they are the person who, and there you go, they are the person who gets sued in the end, who should get sued in charge. But
so is the owner of the self-driving car.
And I was like, I'm not going to say that. In that in itself is kind of thing when coming to like a self-driving car or something like that. Are you saying that, basically you're saying I am responsible for my robot, bottom line. So if it's my car, then I'm responsible for it and things like that. And, also we have the whole bit about facts checking what comes back to you, and things like that. So I think so Thomas, what's your take on that? This whole thing.
I think Paul had a point in the beginning about Hollywood. What you see right there, the strike right now, is like, and that is not plagiarism actually. If you think like generating images out of existing art, but capturing 1 or 2 frames of actors, and then just generating acting people with artificial intelligence. I mean, that is one of the bigger ethical concerns I would have. Is like you're losing the right on yourself. Like, people will see you on the screen, and you act completely different than you would actually act, but it's still you, and it cannot be distinguished if you don't look into the details and into the technical details of that. And the same is true for script writers. I just read an essay like yesterday. It was like those that an author never finished a series. Like, he had like five parts of it, but the original series should have 6 parts, and the 6th one was now written by artificial intelligence, naturally based on the input of the previous 5 parts. And yeah, it can learn the style of writing and stuff like that. But who owns that now? So who owns the 6th part of it? Is it the company that uses it to execute the compute stuff? It's just like, there's big potential coming for real ethical problems, besides claiming that, yeah, this teapot that was now generated in Midway is based partially on the teapot I created 20 years ago, and combined with the teapot that somebody else created, and now it's an AI that generated the image. I mean, that is a problem, but I see that the main problem is like if it swaps over to human. If you take humans as an input and actually recreate them dynamically, that becomes a problem.
I'm going to jump in here and ask if how many of us have seen episode 1 or of the latest season of Black Mirror? It's called Joan is Awful.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I would recommend anyone who's listening to this, go watch that. It is a very self-referential to the exact problem that the writers' strike is going on currently. It basically has a woman whose day is being replayed as a I think they call it Streamberry, but it clearly is Netflix's logo and stuff. And her day is being replayed as an episode at the end of every day, and her life is basically being torn apart. And she's also being played by Salma Hayek, who has just signed off a contract that says you can use my likeness to do whatever you want. I don't want to spoil much more than that, but it's a very great hour of... Yeah, I got you, Larissa. It's a great hour of entertainment, very self-referencing. In fact, watch the first 2 episodes. One, they actually self-reference to each other, so it's kind of cool. So I won't spoil it for you over there. But yeah, it's great. And I also want to refer to something Andres is mentioning here, saying, so there's a discussion going on our stream here, saying, whose responsibility is it? If you're in the car, it's your responsibility, even if the car was in auto drive mode and it hit somebody, you're still responsible for that. I'm going to agree with that. But then, Andres brought up a good point, is like, if you bought a toaster and the thing caught fire and set your house on fire, are you responsible for it, or is it the manufacturer of a bad toaster that does that? Microwave, my apologies. And Andres is like, it's the user's fault. I don't think so, unless the user has been hacking their toaster, or there's AI in the toaster that it's something. Because we know we're going to be George Jetson. We're only 2 years away from the George Jetson's future, where everything is got to say, hey. I'll let you guys continue on.
Yeah, here's the thing about the toaster, though. With the toaster, you are there to supervise it in some sense. You're there, you have control over it to the degree that you can, among other things, unplug it. You can throw the baking soda on it. You are a responsible person. You've got a fire extinguisher in your kitchen. You are there, and you can make those changes. But when you're in the back seat of a self-driving car that on top of everything else has no steering wheel, what are you going to do at that point? And there's an AI ethicist, a friend of mine used to live in Toronto. Her name is Chris McKillop, and she took a PhD in this stuff in 1993 and has been active in the field ever since then. Her partner Stuart is also an AI researcher and ethicist, and apparently some people did some work on surveying potential purchasers of people who are enthusiastic about the idea of having a self-driving car, and they asked them a really interesting version of the trolley problem. You're in a self-driving car. The car is programmed to avoid hurting other people. The option is it kills somebody in the road or it kills you. Which option are you going to pick in your self-driving car package? And all of a sudden, people's ardor for self-driving cars goes like that when they're faced with this kind of dilemma. Is the car going to kill somebody else, or is it going to kill you? Bearing in mind that you don't have responsibility or you don't have control over the car in that moment. What's most interesting about that is, for me, two things. One is, when confronted with an actual problem, with the possibility of a problem, people's enthusiasm for certain kinds of things appropriately dampens. That's one thing. The other thing is, we already have self-driving cars. We call them buses. We call them taxis. We call them trains. It's not that we want a self-driving car. We don't want some machine to drive us somewhere. We want to be somewhere. And anything that gets us somewhere is, to my mind, a reasonable way of doing that. So there are consequences associated with all of the applications of technology that we have. It would be well for us to look aside a little bit, stop being dazzled for a moment, and start looking at the longer term implications of these things. And if we pay attention in the world, there are these voices of people who say, there could be a problem here. Those people are testers.
Yeah, that's so true, so true, and so that's so true. It's just funny. Just before we roll on, and because we could talk about the whole ethical implications of this in itself all day. But is a very thing here that pops up, and I'm going to put it on the stream there. See that, and that is one of the things that I think we could look at this and think that is a real good question. When it's all about the AI, and you could imagine that you could create a evidence in a case exactly, and frame somebody else, and the evidence will be so good. Then how do we deal with something like that?
But Larry, is that really something new? I mean, you can do that today. With good acting and good mask, you can already do it today.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Intelligence to that.
That's the idea. A lot of things that we could do. A lot of the things that could be done now, but is we talking about when it's being used, when it's actually being used. Now it's just people might be playing around and say, "Oh, look, I can make this. Look, I can do that." But it's about when people start actually using it outside in the outside world. Then that's a big issue. But that in itself is a whole different a discussion by itself. But in saying that, and I think Michael raised the point, and I think that gets us to where we want.
I think we lost. Oh, there we go.
So notice the pattern here. We lose the video, and then the video comes back, and then we get the audio for a while. We lose the audio for a while.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm not sure what went on there.
Larry, you're saying something the internet does not like. The AI is cutting you out. It's already here, man. I don't know what you said, but don't repeat it.
Okay, I won't repeat it because I know some people here, some didn't. But what it is You know, when we are automators. You know, we are automators. We doing this combined. We have over 100 years doing this stuff. Yeah, and that is one of the things is how do we look at the whole generative AI in test automation? And I think that is where we you know, that is what the real discussion is all about. You know, how do we not how do we deal with it, but what do we think of it, and how does it enhance, you know, what we already know? Tobias?
Yeah, I mean, I like the metaphor that Michael just gave. A bus is a self-driving car. In that sense, if you are a manager, you have a lot of generative AI in your testing already, because you have a lot of testers. They are already there. So
you don't need the A though.
That's true. Yeah,
but AI, actual intelligence.
that is true. Yeah, from that sense, it's there since actually years. Yeah, where do I see generative AI in testing? Honestly, I guess like everybody else, I play around with it, and I also follow Jason Arbon on LinkedIn, and I know that's a no-go for some, but he has some good points, and he's bringing up some good points on like how do you handle ChatGPT or Claude V2, stuff like that, and I also see those different tools that call like, yeah, we use NLP for language translation, and you can generate those test cases automatically. We understand plain English, and plain English is nothing else than a coding language in the end as well. It's just with a different grammar. And what I came up with as a conclusion, and that is what I tested for myself, and what I found works for some of my clients, not all, is like generating complex test data. That is where I really save time in projects. And that is actually where I'm aligned with Michael as well. It's like we should use that stuff as a tool. We shouldn't rely on, and we can still create test data manually like we did previously, and we can use all of the stuff that we used beforehand. But I'm really impressed if I'm going to like Pi or like ChatGPT or Claude V2 and ask those tools, hey, I have the following structure, and that is transactional test data. So there are dependencies in the records, and it needs to be timely precise and stuff like that. This is an example. Generate some new synthetic data based on the rules that you find in this data. And that is where I see it useful right now.
Have you tested that?
Yes. Have I tested it enough times to have a generic answer and say it will always work? No. But I tested it for specific scenarios, for specific customers, where we said, like, okay, how long will it take us to generate the data by hand? And that is a long process, because it's usually insurance companies and
problem, yeah.
banks. Problem?
But who generates data like that by hand?
It's not generated by hand, but it is modified by hand, because usually you don't have the data. Again, it's credit card processing data, so that is a lot of different data and a lot of different dependencies. So what they usually do is taking productive data, anonymize them, giving them some cleanup, and also rearrange the orders. And there is some process that actually people are doing in that to generate test data useful test data out of it.
Yeah, okay. But I don't see that as by hand exactly, though. I mean, if you're using machinery to take actual actual data, obfuscate it, anonymize it, right? Get rid of all the PII. That's a very realistic data, and therefore representative of what the product is going to encounter in the real world. And then we could also juice that up with some pathological data that shouldn't get processed, and that too we can use machinery to help us generate.
Mm-hmm. And here comes regulatory and says, like, now you're not allowed to use data from production anymore. So the whole process breaks down. And this is actually where we said, like, okay, we take the existing test data and generate new synthetic test data out of that.
So you've got access to the data. You've got machinery that can reprocess it and make it not real, but representative. Is that a manual process, though? Or is that an analytical process? aided and accelerated by tools.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is, Michael. And I was just about to say that it's more of a, a process where it's all about analytics. Because if you just go to any tool and say, give me, I want to create some data and this is the outline, you need to actually tell it what it is. And then we'll say, oh, he wants names, address, and then it'll just generate. But you would need, I think you would need to give it at least a starting point. So it will say, oh, so this is the kind of data it wants, and then it'll just go and generate 1,000, 5,000, 6,000 lines of that same, replicatable data, just spin it up and clean it up. And I think, Thomas, and I think the whole idea of where they used to use production data and then clean them up in the background and reuse it, I think due to some big stuff over the years, they stopped doing that now. So that's not, you're not really supposed to do that anymore, So Paul, yes, you're laughing. So Paul, go for it, let me hear you.
So while you guys have been chatting, I had never heard of Pi. So I brought Pi up on my screen. I asked it, who is Paul Grossman? And it gave me a BS answer that I'm a lawyer that does some stuff and has been retired. And then I asked her, who is Paul Grossman in test automation? And it says it's somebody who is basically gave the description that I gave of myself. And it's asking me, are you interested in automation? And I said, what if I told you I'm the Paul Grossman that you described? And it said, wait, what? No way. It's an honor to meet you, Paul. It's, oh my gosh, I think I found the replacement for ChatGPT. I'm not going to pay for that anymore. I'm going to get this.
So a tool that
go ahead, Michael.
What's that? A tool that sucks up to you is very enticing. It's very dazzling. Right?
It is.
But say one of the things that James and I, in response to the aforementioned stuff that Jason Arbon had put on the web, since Jason was tweaking me, and he referred to my name in his title, we took that as a provocation, and we said, okay, what we've got here in this Jason's post Bolton AI, there's 9,000 words of conversation with ChatGPT. 9,000 words.
Okay.
And analyzing that over the last couple of weeks, it's almost 2 weeks, I think. And to analyze 9,000 words of text and to ask, is this, first of all, is this an interaction with something that looks like an expert tester? What we're seeing is not that it's an expert tester, that it's like Clever Hans. Clever Hans was that horse very famously in the 1800s, 1900s, who could do mathematics. And it would do so by, doing things like tapping its foot. So what you would ask it, what's 7 plus 5? And it would go tap, 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 and it would get to 11 and 12, and then at 12 it would stop. People thought, wow, this is amazing. The horse can do math. Turns out that the horse was responding to subtle cues, not intentional even, that the horse's trainer and presenter was emitting. I'm not sure exactly what the right word is, but the horse was responding to the trainer, who would make a shift or a change in his body that the horse could perceive, thinking, okay, now it's time to stop. And our experience was that watching Jason go through this process, what was happening was he would get answers that weren't really very satisfactory, and then he would continue to prompt it and cue it until he got an answer that did. Now, analyzing that stuff and looking for problems in it has taken us, at this point, we're into about 35 hours of analysis on this. How is this a time saver? Because when you ask ChatGPT to generate valid stuff, you really are playing with fire, because it has a probability of generating invalid stuff. We decided to take this and treat it as though this were really serious, and we've come up with a list. I don't even know how many items are on the list of things that ChatGPT does that are in some sense pathological. I'll speak to the first one, which was placation, the example that we just heard about. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize for the confusion. Hey, it's great to meet you. That sort of stuff, that dazzles us into believing that we're dealing with something sentient. In curiosity, the tool does not ask questions as an expert tester would. Hallucination, you've already mentioned that. It made stuff up. Incongruence, it doesn't follow the process that it states are the appropriate processes to follow. It's innumerate. I was playing with prime numbers last night with GPT. It can't do math. It's incapable.
That we know. That we know.
It's lazy. It's unteachable. It's also opaque. It doesn't really explain how it came up with stuff. It's forgetful. It's capricious. It changes its answer when given just a little bit of pressure. It's non-responsive. It provides questions that we didn't even ask. It's blind. It cannot process a diagram and make sense of it. It is vacuous. It gives trivial answers. And it's also obsolescent, because if you're asking it anything about something that happened before 2021, doesn't know about it.
You see, that
problems. And which
yeah, but Mike, at least I think the last part is not completely true, right? Because meanwhile, at least for ChatGPT, they do have plugins. They can connect to the internet. So what they do is like they do some search queries in the background and bring the text into like a preamble to the actual query. And I think you can get more current data meanwhile if you're using GPT-4 version, including plugins that connect to the internet.
You can get it, but that doesn't mean that you will get it. Can work does not mean will work. That's really important for testing.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But that's the case for any conversation with a human as well. Is it like you might get a good answer, but it doesn't need to be?
Yeah, no, but I was going to say there. But to add to that as well, Tobias, like I was saying earlier on, and the whole September 2021 thing was there because I created Classy.js. It has been out there since 2016. You could do a search and you bring it up. And I asked it, and I don't know how to get to know. I said, let me try this. And I asked it, how could you do cross-browser testing with Classy.js? And it actually told me that it was last updated in September 2021, and that have no information on Classy.js and at least that leads me to think, wait a minute, if your last data update was in 2021, Classy.js have been out there since 2016. So it had to have and it all comes down to what Michael's saying, it's about that algorithm that they use. And I think somebody mentioned on the chat here about paying for the data set. Now the data set is the internet. I mean, you have to think about it. The data set they have to use have to be the internet. Literally, as I would say, literally download the internet and train it on it, right? But the thing with that is, I don't think the whole thing is how much of it is being trained on. It's not the whole thing, because if you could not find something that is there that you can actually go to your hand and do a search and find it, but ChatGPT don't have it, then it gives a rise to what percent of the data set are they using for training?
But Larry, that's also universal truth, isn't it? That's the same for Google. If your page is not in their index and you're using Google to find the information, you will not find it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. What percentage of the thing that they actually using to train it on? That's what I'm saying. What percentage of it? It means that they're not using the whole thing. They're using a subset of it, and in that subset does not have all the information. So the whole consensus of it, of it being what it is, we will get answers where it will give you some answer. And then if you just tweak the question slightly, it gives you a completely different answer, you know, to what it was and things like that. But I think the point I'm making here is, I think the population in general have become so, oh my gosh, this is a really thing. And they tend to agree with everything that it spits back at them. I think that's, you know, that's the whole thing here. And what we're trying to say is, you need to take everything with a pinch of salt. As we say back in the Caribbean, you need to take all the responses that come back to you from ChatGPT with a pinch of salt. And then you weed out, I mean, nothing wrong with it. I just use it sometimes, ever so often. Ad Huxley use it as well. So, you know, but I think it's about the pinch of salt and about how we as the user interpret what comes back to us and how much of it that we actually going to use. And like Larissa said earlier on, it's about facts checking. You know, it comes back and you fact check.
And I think that is the really important part. And if it turns out to be like Michael said, if I need to invest more time into the fact checking than what I saved by using it, I guess it's not a tool that I want to have in my tool belt anymore.
So you see, that brings me to my next question for you guys. My next question is really, when you say AI, generative AI that will help us with our test automation. So we build this product, hypothetical product. I just build a store. It has 10,000 items in it. And my store is available across 15 different languages, is in 15 different languages and things like that. Somebody will say, oh yeah, I have an AI-powered test automating tool that could test this for you. And I say, okay, fine. My question here is, how long would it take? And the question is simple: how long would it take for your AI-powered tool to learn my product to test it for itself, if that is possible at all? Tobias, I have you on the big screen. Go for it.
Yeah, the interesting question is, and that is something that I always bring up in those discussions. If you hear like we have an AI-powered tool that can test your application automatically, and we have a higher coverage of test cases now and stuff like that, and as long as the tool will not be able to understand the intent of use of the application, it will not be able to actually use the application. That's something that I actually talk about like since the last 3 years. And that is a problem, because you said like, when will your AI tool have learned my application? Yeah, how will it learn my application? Somebody needs to show the tool the application, and that also takes time. And there's one little example on that side actually. How long will it take? And we don't know, but we do know that we still don't have self-driving cars. Buses and trains aside, but we don't have self-driving cars. And on the other side, we know they have more than 3 billion miles already as training data, and they're working on that since like 10 years, 12 years, I don't know. And how long does it take you to get a driving license as a human? Is like 14 hours. So you take 14 hours of driving lessons, and afterwards you can drive more or less safe along the roads. And that gives us some perspective on where we are right now and how long would it take. And a piece of like ERP software or any kind of software actually might be a lot more complex than driving a car in a 3-dimensional space. And
that's absolutely true. But I want to add something else, and that is the whole history and the whole evolution of cars is in making them safer and safer and safer.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work that's being done on self-driving cars, it seems to me, is pointed at the wrong thing. Why, and I'm grateful to Harry Collins for pointing this out to me. Why is it that Silicon Valley and the tech community in general wants to solve, why do we want to solve the whole problem with machinery? Why not use what we can, why not put into our sites what we can use really, really super productively and safely that still keeps people in control? Boeing is one of the best examples of this. Boeing is the philosophy behind the cockpit automation for Boeing airplanes is that the pilot remains in charge. And the record of improvement in airline safety is unimaginable. Since November 2001, in North American airspace, there has been not a single loss of life incident, but four. 4 lives have been lost on board or near aircraft. Passengers. 3 of them were not wearing their seatbelts. 1 of them was sucked out the window during an uncontained engine failure. Now, immediately people will come along and say, well, what about the Boeing 737 MAX 8 incidents elsewhere in the world? Yes, that's a huge story because Boeing lost its way for a while there. Boeing forgot that the pilot has to stay in charge. And through economy and with the absence of training, negligence on Boeing's part, we had these 2 horrible incidents. But it used to be we would have 5 or 10 major plane crashes a year. And we don't anymore. And that's because of the marriage of excellent cockpit automation and incredibly good training, thanks to simulators, in which pilots can be put into very, very dangerous situations over and over and over again without ever leaving a little room in, where is it? Is it in Denver? There's definitely one there, right? There, but these, yeah, well, our friend Alex Baudouin, coolest tester in the world for my money, was a tester of these simulators and also a 5-stripe pilot of 777s.
Interesting.
And the airline business has been magnificent about this. The car business, not so much, because they keep trying to solve the entire driving space. But incremental improvements, little by little by little, can make cars immensely safer. Everybody goes quiet for a moment there.
Oh no, like for a minute there, I was waiting for the video to come back because I lost you there for a minute. But in saying that, you know, Paul, yeah. I mean, I had to throw this at you as well because, you know, I know about you and this whole thing. But then, how do you, what do you need to add something to this or take away something from it? Or is Tobias and Michael actually knocking the nail on the head with a hammer properly?
No, I agree. I agree with Michael. I mean, the number of instances I remember growing up in the 70s, and there was a plane crash at least once a month reported somewhere going on, and it scared the heck out of me as a kid. And now I get on a plane, and it's like, yeah, there's there's 9 zeros chance that I'm gonna was it 9 nines chance I'm gonna get to my destination without any problems, and I agree with that. I think autonomous driving is going to be something that's going to make the world a little bit safer because there's usually the reason we're in a collision for some reason is because we're distracted by something we're not watching all the time. But to have the car automatically looking around 360 degrees and saying, "Oh my gosh, there's a truck coming from that direction over there, from behind that fence that you can't see the truck, but I just caught a glimpse of the reflectors," and apply the brakes automatically for you, or swerve, or do something earlier on before I can react. I'm all for that.
It sounds like a nice idea,
but
it is because I've been in that accident. I've been in that. I'm like, I wish I had a car that saw that truck coming. I'm glad if I had not reacted, if I reacted a quarter second later, I wouldn't be here to talk to you guys about it.
You see, that the whole thing is about like Michael saying, it's about incrementation. You know,
Yep.
do a little bit. Of course, I like to be driving on the road now. I like to drive. I like to change my gears. I like to do it all. But at the same time, you know, these little things, do it little by little. A sensor that states, oh, you just trip across slightly over the white line. Or, you know, or like Paul say, oh, in 10 seconds you will see a truck coming around the corner. So you need to all these things, you know, do them smartly, and you know, do them in one time. And that is what and if you look at it and you take it away from the whole car scenario, and because that is one of the things too, because we test them all, cars, software, everything. It's all about how much of it we try to put into any one space at any time, you know, any one space at any time. And if we're gonna put it all in one go, think about it like, what's the golden rule in software development? You never deploy on a Friday. You know? you know the rule, you never deploy on a Friday. And I think that is it, because it happens, and that's what happens. You want to build the piece, you want to build whatever it is, and you want to say, here's my product, push it in live. But if you try to test all that together, then you have a massive testing task on your hand. But if we do it incrementally, as we build it, we test it, by the time we're ready to go live, we have a real strong product with, you know, yeah, it'll still have little bugs inside there somewhere, but it wouldn't be as much as if we build the whole thing and then say, Thomas, test that for us, and we need to go live next week. You know, I think that is it, you know,
Well, we had a little bit of a breakdown there with Larry. I'm sorry, Larry, you dropped off a little bit on my side. But I will say there's, you know, when you talk about never deploy on a Friday, I remember in my first testing company, they would have a release date, a deployment to QA would be on Wednesdays, but the developers would not actually make that deadline. And then they'd push it to Thursday, and then they'd push it to Friday. And then it gets to be about Friday, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, great, we just pushed it. All right, QA guys, go ahead and test it. You got all weekend. I'm like, are you kidding me? And that's why I kind of, and that was back in, you know, 2001. And that's when I started hearing about, you know, we started hearing about shift left. I'm like, cool, let's go left, like release on Monday, get it to QA by Tuesday. So we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we can do this. And we don't have to sit around all weekend and lose our family lives, just making sure the software is good and solid.
You know, so that is, and I know I'll drop off there for a minute, but that is what I was just about to say. You know, my thing here is, what's the measure of human expertise?
What is the measure of human expertise?
Testing environment. Carrie, Mary, Jane have inside there.
Larry, have you got a wired or a wireless connection to the net?
My connection where I'm is wireless, but my router is just like 2 seconds next door to me.
Uh-huh.
and most of all, they will love this. I run it on 5G, Papa. At least so they tell me.
I think you might find 2.4 is paradoxically stabler, but anyway, I'm only seeing myself at this moment. I don't know if that's a good thing for anybody other than me. Okay, there we go. That's better.
There you go. Yeah. So so as you're on the big screen, I mean, just go for it at the same time. The question here is, you know, how much human, that person who's going to do it. How much, what kind of expertise level? I'll use the term level lightly. Level must they have, to be really involved in an AI testing environment.
That is a fabulous question and a very, very deep issue, because from the tool vendor community, we've seen some pretty horrible stuff, seems to me. No code automation, low code automation. You don't need testers anymore. Anyone can do this. And well, that's a nice fantasy. But the important part of testing is not whether you can code or not. Being able to code is fantastic. It's a wonderful thing, super useful. But around any project that I've ever seen, the problem is not that we don't have enough coders. It's that we don't have enough people who are thinking critically about the product and who are investigating and analyzing risk. If you're a tester and you don't code, you have two choices at least. One is learn to code, and the other is learn to use your social skills to get people to write code for you. It's kind of like the self-driving car thing, isn't it? We can get, absolutely, we can get somebody else to do that part. And in fact, a lot of the time, it'd be great to have the programmer work on creating test tooling as part of the programmer's own discipline. See, a lot of what passes for testing in software development these days, and it's been true for quite a while, is the checking of output such that if we supply this data to this function, make the function perform, and by function, there's a huge range of scope for that, but we get the function to perform, we observe some output, and we decide, is this the output that we anticipated and that we desired? And that's very amenable to machinery. Most of the time, though, it seems to me that ought to be part of the programmer's discipline. And that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. And programmers often need help with that. They need people to, because there's a volume of stuff that the programmers are doing, and creating and maintaining that sort of stuff can slow down the programmer to a fairly significant degree. If you're trying to make forward progress, you probably don't want to test very deeply as you're trying to build something. That's all right. There's a shift, though, at a certain point where we have to determine not just can this product produce this output, but what problems lurk, what issues, what problems might have slipped by even a very highly disciplined development process. And that's a different take on testing. And those two things get confused with each other quite a bit. There's a supposition that the more automated checks we have, the better our coverage. Well, that's true to some degree in some circumstances. Or as Jerry Weinberg put it in 1961, the year I was born, the sheer number of tests is a little interest in itself. The real issue is, does each test produce some knowledge, do some work not done by other tests? And so what we see a lot of the time in automated checking is stuff that includes very little variation, that is a kind of rote and that sort of stuff. And then there's not too much that's terribly wrong with that, except to the degree that it might distract us from looking for those deep, hidden, rare, subtle, intermittent, emergent problems. And that's where I stand on this. Yes, absolutely. Let's use tooling for that first set of stuff, but let's not forget the second. And let's recognize that where there's risk, we've got to do deep, investigative, probing, risk-focused testing, and some testing that isn't based on a known risk in order to discover risks that we weren't even aware of.
Yeah,
that requires expertise.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, and that brings, just to add before I throw it to Paul and Tobias, is that the whole thing about what do you test, and if you have the tests doing the same thing, and one of the things that just jump out of mind as you say that is logging. You have an application, 15 different, you have to 15 different, well, like I say, you have 4 different types of login for it. A user, as an admin, as as a customer, and then you say as a company. And then, but the thing is, why would I need to write 4 separate tests for that when if person A could log in, everybody else should be able to log in if the data exists? Because the login functionality does not change. It does the same thing. It takes a username and a password and it submits you into the system. Whether it is an admin user, the only difference would make is what comes back if you're logging as each of these different individuals. So like we say, it's all about, like you say, Michael, and I 100% agree with you. And so is our good friend Daniel Webb online. I think he says, I'll show what he says. This is what he said. He said, I totally agree with you. And one thing that happens is opinion that that's compensating, Yeah, and that is what we actually is actually happening and stuff like that. So, Paul, you wanna have a shot at this?
That they're compensating for that. I see that there's kind of a bad idea that's going around, but it's been around for 20 years, which is let's automate everything so we can get rid of our manual testers, which is a really bad idea because there are 2 things that are done, and Michael referred to both of them, which is one, you're doing your automation testing, you're doing your exploratory testing. The problem is that manual testers are much better at exploratory testing and being creative than your automation scripts that are scripted out. They're just going by whatever the requirements were on that. There may go to the next level, which is going to be really scary, is that, wait, the AI is smart enough to be creative because we already saw it hallucinating. It can come up with these crazy ideas of, all right, let's put Kesha's name, stage name into the site and see if that $sign blows up our database because it went through on there. And trying to find more ways to find creative ways to do cross-site scripting, and we get into security on that. I think there's going to be managers going to say, wow, I've got this AI that can do both. We can run the scripts we've got, and it can also create some exploratory testing, so we don't need the manual testers. Then ultimately you come back and say, all right, who's left to do the analysis? If something failed, why did it fail? Well, we got rid of all the humans. The AI will tell us what what caused the problem, and that's going to be a really bad rabbit hole. And I kind of warn people about that. I don't see that becoming good. I think it should be a balance between keep your humans who are really much more creative than the AI to do exploratory testing, and keep your automation to get all the more stuff that's out there. And I'm also going to agree with to the point that if you have automated generation of tests, you could create millions of tests. But of what value is that if it's only slightly different from one to another?
Yeah, exactly.
But there is something else, is that when you were mentioning, Larry, was like, okay, we got 4 different users who are logging in, but each one of those users might get a different view of our application. So we could be logging in as our admin all the time and checking that everything works, but when 99% of our customer base is not admins, they're users, then we might be missing something along the way there. So it's always, to keep an eye on it, what credentials we know, make sure we're going the right path to get the right results.
The login example is a wonderful.
I completely agree. I completely agree with that. And so in saying that, so Thomas, I know I see you there, so let me put you in the hot seat. I mean, in terms of, the same thing, about, you have views about the whole human expertise, what level of expertise. And I think before you answer, I think I see inside the chat here somebody mentioning,
Larry, you're going to have to repeat that because you just dropped out.
Sorry.
I'm not sure what it was that you saw. He's laughing. We're waiting for your audio. Okay, go ahead. Repeat that. Repeat what you saw.
A minute ago there was the whole thing about it. And I said before Thomas answered, I was saying that somebody in the chat was talking about qualifications, and in terms of expertise. And one of my arguments with that whole thing is you could be qualified to the truth. Well, you could do all the qualifications that these so-called bodies give you, that makes you qualify you, give you a piece of paper as a test, and then you're not good at it at all. So personally, from my point of view, I don't think the qualifications in that sense have anything to do with the expertise of a tester.
Nothing.
In saying that.
In fact,
so what?
They're exemplary of bad testing. Right?
I'm actually surprised you said that. You dropped out, so I'll let you speak.
Tobias, the is yours. You go for it.
Imagine taking your product and subjecting it to 40 multiple choice questions. Is it ready for release?
Yeah, there you go. That's the whole point, isn't it?
It only has to pass 26 of those 40 questions. It only has to get 26 of them right. Is your product ready to ship? I don't. Expertise, I have to say, Larry, I really want to applaud you bringing that up. There is a book by a fellow named Harry Collins. I've got a bunch of his books here, like these two, Artificial Intelligence and Tacit and Explicit Knowledge, but he's also got another book called Rethinking Expertise. And the subject of expertise is hugely important because several kinds of expertise. One of them is what we might call contributory expertise, somebody who can advance the craft, somebody who can perform the work in a particular domain, in a particular discipline. There's another level of expertise. So contributory expertise is something where you can actually, write the code. But there's also a level of expertise which Harry calls interactional expertise. You're not qualified to advance the art, to do the work, but you are qualified to speak the practice language of that work and have sensible conversations about it. That level of expertise in coding is something that is really good for testers to have, because that allows us to have good conversations with developers, to talk about what's possible and what might not be so possible, to probe and investigate risk, even though a tester might not be capable of writing production code. Most aren't, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it because it's a different skill set. Expertise and calibrating our expertise is really important. Here's why. Because generative AI provides the illusion of expertise. It is an illusion of expertise. It provides the illusion of competence in analyzing stuff, but really what it's doing is it's parroting stuff that it found on the internet. And what we have to realize is that most of what's talked about on the internet in terms of testing is garbage. I mean, most of it really is trash. Most of it is rehashes of stuff that we've seen before thousands and thousands of times, ideas that were bad in the 1990s when they first started getting talked about and got endlessly repeated all the way along. And the volume, remember that a big part of what goes into the training set for things like ChatGPT is stuff that has not been evaluated by experts. It is a sort of a collection of stuff that has been scraped from the net. And let's think about what's going on the internet. What most people are talking about, it's trivial and silly. And that goes for testing, and it goes for every other discipline.
Yeah, agreed. And
I'm
I think
just
that's the whole thing. I mean, and I'll come back to you, Thomas. So back to you, and I have the floor is yours actually, because I want to get your take on it.
I think it's to what Michael just said, is like Wikipedia is also on the internet, and it's also driven by the public. And I think you can use it for the good and also for the bad. And that's the part, the level of does any information that's provided to me have a level of expertise? Or do I need to have the level of expertise to identify if what I'm reading is garbage or what I'm reading is helping me and giving me new insights? I guess I need to have that level of expertise to understand what I'm reading and making the right assumptions based on that. And that is in general talking about expertise, and also what came up before, and is like testers need to dive into the product and understand the product and dig deep and find those unexpected bugs and you can call it de-risk the product, which I guess is wrong in any sense, because the tester cannot de-risk the product because they cannot change the product. But let's phrase it so that everybody understands that. And the thing is, that's all true. But my reality looks like that. If I want to book a flight, the application crashes. If I want to log in somewhere, I get a prompt that tells me my email is invalid, even though it is my email. So it's for me, the quality in software went down over the last 20 to 25 years. So if you provide a lot of courses and if you try to build up expertise in testers, and I don't name any of those certifications or whatever, but all of those courses that testers can go right now, why do I not see any increase in quality of work, actually, in increased expertise in all of those testers? Why do I see more and more surface bugs that, when you think about it, if anybody would have ever used the application, they would have seen all of those bugs that I'm seeing in my daily life? So apparently, people are blind these days. It's not really about expertise. It's like, how much do I love my job? How much do I live for what I'm doing? It's like, if you talk to Michael about testing and you bring up and say like automated tests, sorry for that, you can actually see like the flame is going up in his eyes, and he will correct you about it can only be automated checks. And that is actually what is needed somewhere in testing. And I don't see that in many people, to be honest. It's like their daily job. They have their test plans. They want to follow their test plans. That's fine. That's easy. Okay, I did that. Passed. I mean, I was in a project for a blood typing instrument, and we had 21 testers there, and they tried to study all of the material, and they talked to the developers, and everything took place, and they created those magnificent test cases. In the end, version 1 came into the labs, and you know what? Nobody ever talked to those lab personnel how they are going to use those analyzers. And naturally, they use it in a completely different way, and those ways were never tested, and yeah, naturally, some of them crashed. So this kind of expertise is like, what kind of expertise do we know? Do we really need? Is it like expertise on how to test? Or is the only expertise on how to test that I really need is, Jesus, talk to the right people before you start testing and try to get an understanding on how the application is being used in the field, and just run it like that. That's I'm the only one.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I mean, that's the big agreement here. And like you say, and one thing I want to touch on, as you say, it is, I think today a lot of, despite with all the whole tools coming out, you know, the AI ones and everything else that they have out there, is that a lot of testers now, it's a job. It's about a job. It's not about a passion. Like you say, when you talk to myself or Michael or Paul, for them, you say test. Well, our brain don't start to go like 50 miles an hour, you know, okay, right, yeah, really. But, and you're not seeing that. You're not seeing that bite, as for what a better word now in people. It's just like, I go to work, 9 to 5, I get the job done and I leave, you know, and things like that. So yeah, Michael, yes, I know. So
no, I want to. I'm putting my hand up because I saw Paul go for his notebook, and I want to hear from him.
Yeah, but I'm not going to
write notes so I can remember what I want to get back to.
Yeah.
No, well, and I may have confused things. I did want to clarify something because I do see the discussion going on our side over here, talking about certifications and stuff, and I do know that Michael's involved with. I believe it's ISTQ. I always get the letters wrong. I apologize. But I guess one thing I point out there is
I'm not involved with the ISTQB.
You are not. I'm sorry. I thought
In
it was...
any way. I
Okay.
reject
Okay.
it. I think it's a disaster.
My apologies. I thought you were. See, there you go. I'm putting out BS right now. So my point I wanted to cover is that there's discussion. People talk about is it worth getting any sort of certification from any organization? I'm not with them either, by the way, but I do work with the I guess the number 2 competitor, and a lot of people say it's not, a certification isn't worth your time or anything like that. I disagree with that. I think there are people like the 4 of us. We do this day to day. A certification doesn't really make any use to us. But I personally don't go telling a brand new person saying, "Hey, you shouldn't get a certification because it's not valuable to me." I certainly tell people to go get some sort of knowledge and certification, some sort of training that gives you an understanding about what we're getting into if you're brand new into the field.
Wait, are you talking, Paul? Are you talking about certification or are you talking about training?
Well, it ends up being both because
No.
I
would call Michael on this one, Paul. I would Michael on this one. Certification and training, completely different things.
Okay.
Certification is essentially respect. Somebody is saying, "I certify you." That's a sort of authority is saying, "I'm saying that this." When I absolutely agree with you. Training and education, self-education, and mediated education, right? So somebody who's helping you learn stuff. Absolutely. The certification and serious certifications, yes. Serious certifications are probably there too. If you go to university and get a master's degree or get a BA, that's real certification. But the ones that we got it for testing right now are bogus. Training,
there isn't a BA for STATs. That's as far as I know. And then there hasn't been for 20 years. Yeah, the closest thing you got is certifications or somebody's. You can get. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Liberal arts
science programs are both absolutely appropriate forms of some kind of certification for some aspect of testing work. Journalism degree, fantastic certification that is applicable to testing. But if you're talking about training, if you're talking about education, I'm right with you.
Yep, I'm good. Training, education, all I'm thinking perfect. But and I mean we could go on as well on the whole certification against things like that. And to be honest, the only thing I do, I tell people, a lot of people ask me and I tell them, you know what, look at, take a look at what a QA is supposed to be, have a look at that, and then, and then decide, and then look at some training courses. I don't say certification, I say look at some training courses, look at what I have out there. And because certification, especially that one that starts with I, is the worst thing that they have out there. Like somebody said earlier on, can you imagine I build my whole product and I come down to you doing a multiple choice on it. And if you get 60% correct, my product is good to go live.
Now I'm really worried. I interrupted Paul again. So,
I'm trying not to poke there. But you did also mention earlier, you said, there's stuff out there that's just not evaluated by experts. And my question becomes, okay, who are these experts that should be evaluated, and how much of time do they have available for all of us on the internet to go be evaluating whatever stuff we're seeing? Because I do agree, the internet's got full of a lot of crap. I agree. I'm not going to argue Michael on that.
But Paul, since you bring that up, and I think that is one of the things. I put from my point of view, an expert is somebody who spent a considerable amount of time doing it. over a period, and I mean, not like 2 years, 10, we talk about me, you, Tobias, Michael, we in this like 20 plus years. So, and we have been, when it was all record and playback stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's now,
It's still
you
there.
can generate stuff. You can do the whole AI stuff on it. I mean, we know the whole shebang. So if you come to one of us and you say, look, I want to have a certification, and I'm going down that route. I want to have a certification. How do you think I should plan this? And I think if they have that kind of conversation with people or with experts, like Michael say, with experts in the field, then we will have something really solid that people could actually, use. But right now, there's a lot of BS with those certifications that are out there for testing. There's a lot of BS. Yeah, a lot of training and stuff and things like that. But in saying that, and as we on that topic and thing, let's talk about the great topic of coding and manual, because I know people like to separate them. As a manual tester and I'm an automated tester because I can code and I can think. It's a simple question. I think I'll throw this at Tobias first, actually. Yes, I'm kind of used to it because it's one of the questions where you ask yourself, as a QA coming into the field, how much do I need to know in terms of coding and in terms of and in the use of all these so-called AI tooling out there?
You said QA already 2 times in a row. Be careful on that, huh? Yeah, how much coding do you need to know? Is that your question?
Yeah, how much do I need to know it at all? To be a proper. Let me take the word QA out and use the word tester with more feasible like everybody else on the call. As a tester, do I actually need to learn how to code? And if I do, how much of it do I need to know?
And so that's my personal opinion. As all of my opinions are my personal opinion, is like you need to know how to code. Period. As a tester. And you know why? Because it can save you a lot of time. And it doesn't need that you need to buy any of those automation tools or anything else. But in every single project I've been, the tester or those testers that could code actually just created their random small tools on the side that generated data or that made something automatic or that saved them a lot of time. And that is where you can focus on the product itself. So the best testers that I work together with could all code. The worst testers that I work together with could not code at all. But that's just my personal experience. Now, considering the AI stuff, actually, if you trust in the marketing, you don't need to know anything about it because you just tell it, hey, I have this nice piece of software here that was handed over to me yesterday. Please test it for me and give me all of the problems that I would have found if I would have tested it thoroughly. And in reality, I mean, AI opens a completely new world of cans. It's like you need to go into this prompt engineering to get it to where you want it. And in my sense, there are parts of it Paul did a lot of videos for Test Rigor where you see like some natural language processing in place. And I think you also have your own library for that can use NLP or parts of NLP. Yep. And you can see that actually how that saves time. But if you really want to go into like a full-blown AI system, whatever that would be based on large language models right now, you would actually need to understand how to query those models correctly, because it's still a querying language in the end, and you need to do that right. Otherwise, you get random answers, and they can be good or they can be bad, and it's up to you. But if you start guiding the LLM into direction, it gets better into what you are guiding it into, and that takes time. And I still don't know exactly if it saves time in the end, to be honest.
Do you need to know how to code to do that?
To use AI?
To do what you just described, to do prompt engineering, right? To guide the bot.
Yeah.
Do you need to know how to code to do that?
In my world, yes.
In my world, no.
Really, Paul? Paul. That's. I want to. No, that's interesting. I will learn to do it. Paul, I mean, elaborate.
So he mentioned test rigger, and yeah, I've been playing around with it as a tool, as a toy. I would say I don't want to call it a toy, but it is a cool tool. I will say 3 years ago, I was of the opinion, yeah, low code, no code test automation tools are not they're worth like as much as the certification is then anybody in the team. Okay. But I had a change of mind because, like I said, I have this test site out there called Candy Mapper, and on the front of it, it says do these 10 things. Go put in an email, put in your first name, click a send, verify that the email wasn't populated, put in an email, click send, verify the next page got to it. And I sat there and I'm like, okay, how long would it take me to do this in whatever particular tool we're looking at, Selenium or WebDriver IO, and to create the POI, the page object model. Sorry, not POI, different tool. And I happened to talk to the guy who's leading up Test Rigger, and he said, you write the code in plain English. You don't have to use any of the coding that you know. Just click on this, click on that. Out of the 10 steps, 9 of them I was able to write myself. Just verify the page contains this, and boom, it found it. And I didn't need to do any coding on that. It is a low-code tool, and I'm not trying to sell it on anything because I know I've also played around with test result IO, and it's also awesome as well. So I want to make sure that I'm, it's something you guys should also take a look at. And I've been looking at like 4 or 5 of these skills. All right, the point is that yes, I could write the whole thing in plain English. The only time it got a little bit more trickier is if I needed to write something if I wanted to capture some text off the screen, something's in the middle, you have to learn a little bit of regex. But that's something that I can teach people, a couple of 2 or 3 hours. And it's something that everybody needs. Everybody who's watching this thing needs to know regex. If we worked in UFT, QTP, you learned regex as a locator identifier. Today, it's CSS and XPath. You got to know in order to find your elements and know how to write those really well, so that you're not writing a locator that breaks every other time. The cool thing about it is that it's just behind the scenes. I said go find this element, and even if the underlying platform changes, let's say we go from Vue to React or whatever the next flavor thing is, it still finds the text that's on the screen and says, yeah, I found it. Okay, I identified it. As far as I know, it doesn't use AI. It actually just pulls out information out of the screen and goes, yep, I found it. I highlighted it. Now, I'm going to say, us in our level, we're going to say, well, wait a second. How do I know that's the actual text you wanted that was in some sort of area? Maybe it's some button over. You found this button up here, but it's also down here. Did it find that one? And I'm going to say, yeah, that's. I'm trying to read your minds, and I think that's probably what I'm getting because I say the same thing. But it was the point was that it took me 22 minutes to automate that script, and most of it was trying to click the first button, figuring out that one. That was, and that's why I made my website a little trickier. It's just basically clearing a pop-up and telling it, click this object in the upper right-hand corner. But then aside from that, everything else was, I could write it. 22 minutes, I had the test done.
Okay, but that's great, Paul. But my question for you is, where's the testing part in that?
The testing was validate that the information, when we clicked on the button without having an email populated, it gave us an error message that said you have to put the email in.
Okay, just to trust spanner, Paul, according to you, right, your response was you would say no to a tester knowing that cannot write code. But then now, based on what you just said, you wrapped that up in 22 minutes by us writing code, weren't you? Or you just
no, it's plain English,
and then you get a tool to do it.
But Paul, that's exactly the point, and that's what Michael asked me for, isn't it? Like plain English is also code. You just know the grammar.
You're writing some code for something to interact with it to do something else.
But
if you know how to do that,
I'm not doing it do while. I'm not doing get elements. I'm not doing any of that.
If you're talking about regex, You're talking about code.
No, but I'm going so far.
Regular expression parsing is writing code. Regular expression is a coded language.
You know, hello world is writing code. And just that, hello world is writing code.
My script would be verify the page contains hello world.
All right. So I need to ask for your patience for a sec, because I want to outline this, and it's really important. Again, this comes to us from Harry Collins. There are two parts to testing. There are two parts to what we do when we're testing something. The easy part and the hard part. And Harry borrowed language from us in order to express this, but he did it so beautifully that trust somebody from outside of testing, but in the world of sociology to absolutely nail this. He said, computers and their software are two things. As machinery, and I mean, software is machinery. In fact, as Harry points out, the very first computer was literally machinery, gears and cogs and wheels and so on. In that sense, it must be checked in order to make sure that the gears all mesh and that there's no missing teeth and that the wheels spin nicely and the bearings, allow things to spin and everything's cool like that. But Harry points out that's the easy part of testing. The part that we would associate with verification or validation. If we do something here and something appears on the screen and it's there, yay. That's the easy part. It's not necessarily trivial. It's relatively easy next to the hard part. The hard part of testing is this. Because machinery is what he calls a social prosthesis, it fits into social life where a human's once fit, or where a human with new superpowers could fit. It's like a prosthesis, like an artificial arm or an artificial heart. It doesn't do exactly what the original human body part does. The human body with that prosthesis on it has to compensate for the difference between what the device does and what the human body part would do. He says that computers are also social prostheses. And that means that we are always going to be in a place where there's a chance that the computer won't do what we would wish a human with those superpowers to do. And therefore, what we require is a complex social judgment to decide whether the computer will do the job that it's intended to do. Not just, does it make this thing appear here at this time, but does it solve the problem? In fact, one of the tenets of the context-driven software community goes like this. The product is a solution. If the problem isn't solved, then the product doesn't work. Now, if you want to learn to code, if you're a tester and you want to learn to code, if you've got a desire to learn to code, if you want to get stuff done, as Antonio is saying in the chat, coding can save a lot of repetitive work. It's great. You should do it. I do it. It's wonderful. But if you don't want to do it, I would say that's okay. If you're allergic to coding, if you're allergic to programming, we still need lots of people who can do the critical thinking and the risk analysis and the collaboration that I think Tobias brought up. We need people who can do that more than we need another danged programmer on the project. Right?
Yeah,
now,
totally agree.
So,
totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And and that just bring me to the other thing, and it's about we have AI. Now we know what it does. Now we know some of the things about it, and that brings out. And I want each of you guys to spend at least 2 minutes and tell me something about because this is one of the questions out there, and it's real. People are literally afraid. I'm talking about, would AI take my job? Oh, yes, Michael, yes, exactly. That is the actual question there. The question is, would AI take would I be out of a job, let's just say tomorrow, because due to AI? Michael, as you're on the big screen, go for it.
Well, will AI take my job?
Yeah.
No. I mean, no. It's just it's now some naive manager being dazzled by AI, that might take your job. But will the job of thinking critically about technology disappear? No, far from it, because the job of analyzing technology critically is always at the center, because technology is an extension of us. It's an extension of what we do. It accelerates, intensifies, extends, enables, enhances things that we do. And it always does so imperfectly, in the sense that what the machinery is actually doing is not necessarily aligned with what we want it to do. That's one thing. But the other thing we've got to investigate is, do we want to do this sort of thing at all, whatever the issue is? You know, do we want to shop online? All right. If we want to shop online, there are going to be problems associated with shopping online. We need people to look for problems associated with that. The problems, some of those problems are basic technological problems, and some of them are social problems. What I worry about with AI, as with every other piece of technology, it's agnostic about our intentions. If we are virtuous, then tools can help us to become more virtuous. If we are stupid, then tools can help us to become more stupid. And my great concern with AI is that it accelerates our stupidity as easily as it accelerates our capacity to do other things. It accelerates our capacity to generate bullshit at spectacular rates.
Yep.
And what do we got at that point? We got a pile of bullshit that we got to analyze, because it's not necessarily wrong. If you go into a bar and you ask a drunk for marital advice, the drunk may give you some good marital advice,
Yeah,
but you have to decide that, right? And the drunk is not capable of giving you reliable marital advice. So we've got to stay in charge, and we've got to be critical of our technologies so that we get the best from them, so that we get the good things from them and diminish the risk associated with the bad.
I totally agree with that, Michael. And in saying that, I just jump right over to Tobias. Tobias, what you have for us on that exact same topic? Exact same question.
Yeah, that is a good question, actually. And perhaps this time, could we hear Paul first?
Sure.
I just want to be the last ones.
No, that's
okay?
fine. That's fine.
That's fine, then, no problem. Here we go, Paul. It's yours.
Yeah, no, I was gonna totally agree with everything that was just said. Just going back, I don't think, no, AI is not going to take my job. I've heard this multiple times in my career for the last 22 years. It's not just AI. Is automation going to take my job? And the best thing that I did there was I used the automation to provide tools to my manual testers to do something that they hated. They had a test where they had to hit the button for about 20 minutes on their system, and everybody else went to lunch. We called it the FNG, the freaking new guy test. So the new guy sat there and hit the button, and I came up with an automation script. So like, listen, I'll hit the button. I'm not going to validate. It wasn't really a test. It was just a tool. I'll hit the button. Everybody goes to lunch. We come back after 20 minutes. Then you've eaten, and you can do the last 3 clicks to verify that the drive is full. It's more, how can I use AI to enhance my job? That's the real question. And in fact, I look at it, I'm like, yeah, am I going to be put out of a job because of AI's writing code better or faster than I can, or giving me BS code? It's more, you got to have the humans there to look at the results, to do the analysis, to see, if we're taken out entirely, then, who's looking at our email responses that's coming from the AI? We're going to sit there and tend to ignore it And then the next, Monday morning we did a release. Well, the AI has been telling us in the email that there's probably released anyway. Who was responsible for that? Now, use the AI, leverage in some way to be a tool to keep you doing stuff better and learning new things. And and my last 10 seconds is AI isn't the best thing. I'm going to tell you, over the weekend, I was having a chit chat with Larry over here, and he showed me a completely new way to do a select case in JavaScript that I had never seen before. I've never seen an AI figure out how to do it, and I wanted to give some credit over to Larry. Like, wow, this is brand new. I've been doing this for 22 years, and it's been about 3 years since I've seen anything new come along the line. I'm like, great, and AI would never teach me that. Now you can go third.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, thanks, but see, and again, that is the thing, and I agree with everybody here, and I've said that up to about 3 weeks ago. I had a conversation with a young lady, and she knew the testing actually, and she was really, really anxious, and you could see the anxiousness in her face about AI going to lose, and she's going to lose her job, and that is what, and I quote, that is what she heard them saying in the lunchroom, literally. Oh, AI is coming and some people is going to lose the job and people need to do this. And I was saying to her, no, it wouldn't. Because at the end of the day, all the real stuff, right? We could write some fancy code. And I mean, because we have the experience, we're doing this for years. And like Paul said, I just sit down over the weekend and I was like, this is too long. It must have a shorter way to do it. And I come with a very ingenious way to do it. And it works. Now, the thing with that is, because we have this experience, we could do this, and now we could leverage what is coming out, all these so-called AI bits pieces. We could leverage what they have and use it to our advantage, and make our work easier. And I wouldn't say easier. I'll say easier, likely, but to speed up some of the processes that we have, because the whole example of pressing the button, that is real-time consuming. But if I write a little piece of code that could do that in 3 microseconds, it's the same thing, and it's just done faster. So the whole idea is that you're not going to lose your job. You can never lose it. The thing is, one, you will never lose your job, and two, I think it's best for you as a tester or anybody in the field where AI will play a major part to understand what it does and see how best it could suit your situation.
Larry, since you paused, I want to see what I'd like you to push, if you can, or whoever's got the control of it. I'd like you to push what Daniel Webb is saying in the chat. Yes. I think the elephant in the room. Let's put that up there.
There you go. Yeah, and it's true. You think that just doing output checking and that is it. The whole debate, and that is exactly what we're saying here. That's exactly what we're saying. AI itself is one thing, but at the end of the day, is testers. We are the testers. We who have to look at it. We have to do the real stuff. We have to analyze what comes back. We have to look and see if what comes back is really what is supposed to happen, as opposed to what is happening, right? And things like that. Yeah, and so in that, I'll just leave it to that and pass it to Thomas. The floor is yours.
Tobias, yes.
Tobias, sorry.
Yeah, I was just waiting if somebody says, yes, actually, we lose our jobs. Because, and you laugh, but I had exactly the same experience as Larry. Like, I gave a training on artificial intelligence in the Malaysia Training Week, and they were afraid of losing their jobs that they just entered because of artificial intelligence. And my answer is always the same: no. I mean, you cannot lose your job if you do something that's useful, but it might change. There might be a transformation that your job changes to, as Michael mentioned, like, it's critical thinking of technology that will never change. So that's fine. There is no transformation. But if you are the one that is writing repetitive code today, there might be a transformation that you will be the one that is writing better code next month, something like that. But you will not lose your job because of artificial intelligence. I mean, there was somebody and I forgot the name, in 1958, when there was the first artificial intelligence hype, who said, like, in 10 years from now, nobody will have to work anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember
I was
that.
born afterwards, and I still have to work, to be honest. So most of those statements never come true, and I think there will always be work for us. It will never be like in this like in these enterprise movies where people actually, you never know what they actually work. Apparently, everybody's running around busy, but they never work and they never need to earn money to make their living, apparently. And I guess it will never be like that. So there will always be jobs, and I guess as long as you are keeping up with technology, you are always in work. Like the guy in the coal mine who was actually working there with a shovel, if he learned how a modern bagger works or stuff like that, actually he is still in work. So no, you will not lose your job.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I just appeal to everybody who remembers it, because we have terribly short memories in this business. All that talk in 2014 about how by 2024 there wouldn't be any people behind the wheel on the roads. Right? Yeah. Everybody just calm down. There's a wonderful article it's an interview with Rodney Brooks, who worked for, if I remember right, he worked for iRobot for a time, the company that makes the Roomba. He's been an artificial intelligence researcher for years and years, and he said, he made a wonderful point about generative AI. It's really, really good at producing an answer that sounds like a good answer. He says it produces an answer that sounds good rather than what the answer should be.
Yep.
And that is crucial because, again, the volume of stuff that generative AI can produce is makes it very difficult to analyze its output because it takes time to do that. Now, you know, the drunk in the bar providing marital advice, or the gold nugget in the manure. There might be a gold nugget in the manure pile. There might even be some, you know, useful nails. But at a certain point, you have to ask, do you want to slog through the manure pile looking for nails, or do you just want to go down to the hardware store and buy a few? And that is a real issue with the output from AI. And it will always be so because AI doesn't have social competence. It is a pale argument, it seems to me, that says because humans can be wrong and AI can be wrong, therefore AI is as good as humans. It doesn't work that way. That's not an argument that holds together logically. What we should be saying is, what are these things really good at, and how might we use them? So here's a few ways that I've used AI productively in the last little while. Kind of like the drunk at the bar, to go get those little bits of inspiration that I might get just from a different perspective on something. If I am struggling to find a word for something, sometimes I can go to ChatGPT and say, can you give me a word that covers this? And then actually comes out with an occasionally good suggestion. If I want a new test idea, sometimes I go out and I ask ChatGPT to do something, and then I look at how wrong it is. And that helps, right? When I'm going in there with the intent of looking at something that I know is going to be wrong, what can I learn from that? And here's my favorite thing so far. It occurs to me that as a teaching tool, ChatGPT could be fantastic. Here's your assignment. Here's a little spec for you to evaluate. I'm saying this to a student now. Here's a spec for you to evaluate. Feed this spec into ChatGPT and then tell me all the different ways in which it's both right or wrong, right? Give me all the different possibilities for the ways in which it could be wrong. As an analytical tool, or as something to generate stuff for analysis, I think it could be really interesting that way, because as I say, James and I created this list of pathologies in Chat GPT that are fantastic if we apply them to testers too. When a tester is incurious, when a tester is innumerate, when a tester is negligent, when a tester is opaque, we can use the kind of ideas that we've got from interacting with ChatGPT to say, boy, that's a way that ChatGPT is really bad, and that's a way a tester could be bad too. So let's learn from that experience.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's something that we all need to pay attention to. And I mean, I'm saying we all, because you have the old ones like us, and yes, guys are calling you all old. I don't know, is that level? Yeah. So yeah. Tobias, I know, yeah, I realized, yeah. So you're hiding it. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of years behind us, and I think one of the things we want to do is to let people understand that, one, you're not going to lose your job. And I got to tell Paul yesterday, because me and Paul just collaborate a lot these days. One of the things I tell people, this whole thing about AI and you losing your job, and the other thing is I have to mention it, is this self-driving cars. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, my children's lifetime, no, my children lifetime. It will be all this shebang, all working and because at the end of the day, you have to, even we taking AI and we want to test a product, what a manual tester would do, and I mean manual as in a human, what a human tester will do, it will take an AI months to learn that, months, or maybe even years. But the manual person will go in and say, sit with Michael, because Michael writing the code, and we sit together and I say, yeah, okay, right, yeah, and I could test that, get ready for production, and by that time, the time I take to do it, an AI tool wouldn't even get that far in doing where it could leave it on its own to run. And I think that's something that, you know, we need to stress on the people. Now, we have about 9 minutes before we wrap up. So what I'm going to do is this. Yeah, hold on. Just all I'm going to do is this. Yeah, we're going to do
this. AI is not, I just emphasize this. AI is not going to take your job.
Yeah, definitely.
Learn how to describe your job and how to perform your job, then a manager is going to take your job, because the manager not achieve appropriately what you actually do as a tester. As testers, if you don't want AI to take your job, you've got to learn to talk about your work, and you've got to learn to perform your work in a way that its value is manifest. So there is a risk that people will lose their jobs because of AI, but it won't be because of the AI itself.
That's correct.
It'll be because of what people perceive wrongly that AI can do that humans can't. That is a risk, and testers need to address that risk. We've got to get good at talking about what we do, and of course, we've got to be good at it too, which is the easiest way to get good at talking.
Totally agree. So that's what we're gonna do now, guys. Is I want you guys each to leave a piece of pattern knowledge for the audience. So we'll do this. Paul, I'll give you the honor to go first. What do you have, wrap up in this whole topic that you want to have? I'll give you 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes.
All right, 2 minutes. I think the one thing we didn't talk about was actually got introduced at the beginning, like who's going to be sued with an automated car hits a person. But one of the things I'm very concerned about with AI is when we're taking our bits and pieces of code and throwing it at AI and asking it, can you optimize this? Can you give me a header? Who gets the code on the other end? That's because it reminds me a little bit of these websites where it says, hey, has your password been corrupted? Has it been used on the dark web? Well, just put your password in here. We'll go search the dark web and tell you exactly if it's been used or not. I like it more for teaching me something I don't know how to do in whatever particular language I am, or converting language over. But I do try to not give out the code all the code stuff to ChatGPT, because I'm pretty sure I have no idea who's on the other side, who's on the other side of u.com, who's on the other side of Pi, who's on the other side of all these things out there that can write and optimize my code, but I don't want to be giving it away out there. I'd rather keep it to myself. With that thing, I just did see an article recently that said ChatGPT and probably everything else in the future can be set up to be run internally on your local system, so that you can ask the questions, but the data doesn't go outside anywhere. It stays internal. That's my parting 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Interesting. Tobias?
Yeah, I would say the same as I always say, is like, don't fall the marketing traps. There is some useful stuff that you can do with artificial intelligence. Mostly if it's all in capital letters, that's not the part of it that is useful. That is actually the marketing part on it. We use it to actually, like, not in a sense of artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence. So it supports you during a job so that you are faster than beforehand. And I think that's what you should be looking for, to be honest. And just to finish it somehow with a boom, is like, automate as much as you can.
No, I agree. I share that sentiment with you, because like I was saying to somebody the other day, I'm lazy. I'm a very lazy guy. And I remember the Apple guy. What's his name again?
Jobs?
Yes, Jobs. I remember Jobs, and I remember way back in the day he made a comment. If you want to do something really well, hire a lazy person. And it took me a while to understand that, and then I realized, oh, that is what he meant. Because I'm lazy, and I will find the best way to do something that will save me time and energy and give me some more time with the family, as Paul said. Yeah, you're right. It's about automate as much as I can if it's automatable, and
that's the point, and that is also true for artificial intelligence. And need how much time you need to invest. Look at how much time you need to invest in something, and see if there's any benefit. Actually, can you save some time based on the time that you invest into it?
Exactly. Michael?
Okay, well, let's be careful about one thing. Let's not as much as we can. Let's as much as worthwhile to do, which is different.
Yeah.
Different. I will sum up by saying this. Testing is evaluating a product, learning about it through experiencing, exploring, and experimenting. There's a whole bunch of things: that modeling the product, studying it, generating ideas about it, expanding ideas, refining ideas that we've expanded on, overproducing ideas, abandoning ideas, collaborating with other people, analyzing risk, thinking critically about the product, map making, navigating, all these things. Automation of any kind, including artificial intelligence, can do precisely none of these things. When we talk about machine learning, we've got to remember that the learning part of that is a metaphor. So is artificial intelligence part of it. That's a metaphor. It's a way of describing things, and when we use that in an unhelpful way, it is, as Tobias says, marketing. But that's not to say that any of this stuff is useless. But what we do have to be careful of is we have to understand its extents and its limitations. And here's what I urge people to do. We put out a bulletin on this yesterday, a call for people to help us out. We want to do serious testing of ChatGPT. Testing like real people would do, performing actual experiments on it and looking for problems in it. Because here's the thing: testing cannot, should not be motivated by verification and validation. Those are fine things to do. It's okay. But the motivation for testing has to be to find problems that matter before it's too late. Before it causes damage or loss or bad feelings or loss of business, especially if we're working for businesses. But the motivation behind testing has to be a focus on looking for trouble. That's what we got.
I totally agree.
Just as much as we have to do with anything else.
Agreed.
All right, great. And on that note, I want to thank all you guys, Tobias, Michael, and Paul, and for doing this and getting us out there and having this lovely conversation. And there's so much more to talk about, and I think some other time somewhere we can do it. Just stay to it.
Larry, I think we should give a shout out to the people who have been putting it on the stream.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to say thank you to all the people that was online and sharing their thoughts, and sharing the thoughts and bringing up and making the discussion a really good one. And also thank you to Test Result IO for sponsoring us, to giving us the time and the platforms to do this, and and so looking forward maybe to the other one. So on that note, this is Larry Goddard. I'd like to say, creator of ClassyJS, and Paul just tell me, write out some cool code. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, you are.
And it was lovely meeting you. It was lovely having this chat. And until next time, and to everybody out there, good night, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on what part of the world you are. And it was lovely having you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you all. Cheers.